thank you once again for being here. My name is Gareth Dyke. This is an event that's brought to you jointly by Research Square Company and Bentham Science Publishers. We are doing a series of events, and you can have a look at the event schedule. I'll share the link to the event schedule a little bit later. Maybe you'll share it with your friends. Maybe you'll share it with your colleagues. Maybe you'll pass it around and we can share information. We can share knowledge. We can get more and more people into our free events, which we do in the hope of helping people with their writing and with their publishing. Gareth Dyke is my name. I'm the Director of Content at Research Square Company. And once again, let me introduce this event. It's the second in a series that we've put together with Bentham Science Publishers. And today, we're going to be talking about planning your research to publish in high impact journals. Planning your research to publish in high impact journals. Everybody will get an email follow-up from this event containing a link to a certificate and containing a recording of this event today. So don't worry if I talk too fast or you don't catch something or something that needs to be further explained. You'll be able to listen back to this recording at your leisure, as the Americans like to say, a little bit later on. So thanks very much once again, everybody. We'll get started. I see that lots of people have joined us. That's absolutely fantastic. Planning your research to publish in high impact journals, which of course is something that we all want to do. We want to get our excellent research written up and published in the best journals possible as quickly as possible to maximize our impact. So we're going to be talking in our event today about three things. We're going to be talking quickly about journal selection, and then we're going to talk a little bit about maximizing your impact, maximizing the impact of your articles as you begin the writing process. And then I'm going to give you as well some hints and tips and tricks for your title and for your abstract, ways that you can structure your article, ways that you can set up your paper to ensure that it has the highest possible chance of eventual acceptance after peer review, of course, in a high impact factor journal. So thanks for joining us once again. The point of all this training that we provide jointly with Bentham Science Publishers in this series is to help you to be more effective as a writing and publishing academic. That's what it's all about. We do want to share our experience. We have edited hundreds and hundreds of thousands of papers. We manage lots of journals we deal with, and we talk to researchers all of the time. So journal selection, maximizing your impact, and building out your title and abstract for impactful publishing. So this is important. Here's a slide with a few numbers on it. There are about 2 million academic articles published every year, about 2 million. And in the health sciences, medical and health sciences, about 30,000 articles get published every month. That's an amazing number. So one of the first things to think about as a researcher, as an academic, writing up and intending to publish your own research is, of course, the question, how are you going to stand out from the crowd? How are you going to ensure that your research gets picked up, that your research gets read, and more importantly, that your research gets cited? That is, after all, the most important thing. There isn't much point in publishing research if it's not going to get read, if it's not going to get cited. You're not doing research just so you can give your papers to your parents as Christmas presents or hang them on the wall of your office or something like that. You are doing research in order that your research will get read and your research will get cited at the end of the day. So techniques for publishing in leading international journals, techniques for impactful publishing start really from this question of how can you ensure that your research stands out? How can you make sure that that happens? And one of the first things to consider indeed is journal selection. We do recommend that journals are looked at, that you think about where you're going to be publishing your research before you begin the writing process. You've finished your research, you've done a great amount of data collection, you've got your message, you know what your research, you know what your data is going to tell to readers, you know what the message of your research is going to be. Next stage then is to think about where you can publish it. Effective journal selection is a marriage between research and publishing. And really, many successful academics, they don't really start to write until they've decided on a target journal. And that's important. That's an important point. Thinking about your target journal is the first step towards impactful publishing, the first step towards planning your article for publication in a high impact journal. So each journal's different scopes, different audiences, different lengths, and the key word there is audience. Your readership at different journals is potentially going to be different. What kind of article are you going to be writing? Will it be a letter, a rapid communication? And you will develop, I hope, over the course of this training series, over the course of our webinars, joining us for these events, the ability, or more of the ability, to self-evaluate your articles, to self-evaluate your research and start to think, where would I be able to publish this article? So thinking about your journal selection, very important. How can you decide where an appropriate journal could be, should be for your research submissions? Well, talk to other people. Talk to colleagues, network with editors, which is something that authors around the world certainly don't do enough of, reaching out to editors at those international journals and making what we call pre-submission inquiries. And we've talked about this a lot in other events. If you've joined us from other events that we run, one of the things that we do recommend that authors around the world get into the habit of doing is writing to editors before making submissions to assess the suitability of their articles for particular journals. And that's an important point that I want to make as you begin the process of thinking about journal selection. And authors around the world, when selecting a journal for their papers, tend to think about these issues. Impact factor, the reputation of the journal, of course, the reach of the journal within their field, and whether or not the journal is going to be open access or not. So, impact factor, reputation, the reach of the journal within your particular research field, and whether the journal that you're looking at for your publication is open access or not. So we do tend to think about these: impact factor, reputation, reach within the field, and open access. So these are the factors to keep in mind. These are the factors that many authors around the world take into account when beginning the process, when thinking about which journal to select. So I would also recommend that you do have a list of journals in your field or around your field that other successful researchers in your area are publishing their research in. Learn from their experience, learn from where they have been successful at targeting their research, at getting their research successfully published. If you have that list, that short list of potential journals for your research, then of course you can aim high. You can go initially with those submissions to journals with higher impact factors. You can choose appropriately by talking to editors, by talking to colleagues, by discussing your research, your results with your network, by potentially using things like preprint servers to make sure that you get your work into the best possible journals at the end of the day. And we're here, Research Square Company, Bentham Science Publishers. We're here, of course, to help you learn how you can sell and manage those submissions when it comes time to put them into those international journals. So speed, high reach and readership, and a decent impact factor are really what authors want for their papers when they come to that stage of selecting a journal for their articles. And of course, it's a big area of confusion around the world as well amongst authors about what open access actually means, what the different kinds of journals actually are, what the different kinds of journals actually offer to authors. Now, we'll be aware of traditional journals. Everybody will be very familiar with a traditional academic journal. That's a journal where you are going to be able to publish your paper free of charge after peer review, of course, but not everybody around the world is going to be able to access that content after your paper gets published. Traditional journals, publishers make money, they make profits from traditional journals by selling access to libraries and universities. It's called the traditional model. It's closed publishing. We've seen in the last few years a big movement, as you'll be well aware, towards open access publishing. And really, simplistically, there are two different kinds of open access journals. By open access, we mean anybody can get the content, anybody can download the paper, anybody can access the PDF and associated data. Green open access journals, which are very often traditional journals, but which allow you, the author, to put an early stage or earlier stage, maybe the final draft before the actual paper got accepted and put into the final format for the journal. They let you put a final stage draft onto a site like your own website or onto a repository like one of the PubMed central repositories, one of the other kinds of preprint servers, Archive, Research Square, or a site like ResearchGate, for example. Whereas gold open access journals are fully open access. So that's the difference. We're seeing traditional, green, and gold kinds of journals. What's the problem with full open access publishing? There's often a fee for authors. Gold open access journals almost always, very often, are charging you or your institution what's called an article processing charge, an APC, that has to be paid in order for the paper to be published after peer review and after acceptance. So that's a bit of a background to the different kinds of journals that we see in specifically relating to different kinds of open access journal. So we do recommend that you expedite the process, you expedite that process. Some of our insider recommendations would include making pre-submission inquiries, writing to editors, talking to them about your work before you make your submissions, selecting a target journal effectively, reaching out with your title and with your abstract. I will be giving you a template over email at the end of our event today to help you with that process. And in a minute, later on, we're going to be talking about some tips and tricks for writing your title and writing your abstract. So before you begin to write, when you're planning your publication for submission to a high impact factor leading international journal, you need a message. You need to have targeted that journal already. You need to have some idea about who the audience are going to be, the readership of your paper, and also the structure of the writing. So if you are forgetting everything that I say in this event today, if it all goes boom out of your mind, I would encourage you, if you can, to please have a think about these three things before you begin to write your next paper. What's your message? Who are your audience? And what will the structure of the writing be? These are very important techniques that you can use in order to effectively target and write much more effectively an article for publication in an international journal. The three things to know before you start the writing process. Now, having done that, having thought about your impact, having thought about your message, it's also very important for us to talk about what impact actually means in the context of academic publishing. Now, if you go out and you ask academics, we could do this in the chat box. If you ask academics, what is research impact? Then most people will come back and they'll say impact factor, the quality of the journal in which my work is getting published. That's academic impact. And actually, these days, internationally, in terms of how governments assess researchers, how universities assess researchers, how very often we are competitive for grant funding and other, things like jobs and positions and securing resources for our research. Academic impact is really only half the story. Maximizing your work's scholarly impact also should include the difference that your research is making to everybody's lives, the economic and societal impact of your research. So next time when somebody asks you about research impact, let's start thinking more than just about the impact factor of our journals. That's important, of course, but your research should also be making a difference. This is really what we mean by research impact internationally when we look at this, when we assess researchers, when you build your profile and you are competitive internationally. However, publications remain at the heart of academic impact. Researchers count papers. They look at things like impact factors. They look at things like R indices, your H index. Your institutions are going to count citations and circulation. But, does your research circulation actually translate to impact? It's worth being aware of this. It's worth, if you can, keeping track of this as well. How many people are going to cite you, but what benefits can you demonstrate of your research, of your published work to socioeconomic variables, to the lives of ordinary people? Now, we do know, of course, that impact factor as a metric has problems across different disciplines. Of course, if you're a humanities or social sciences researcher, you're not going to be so happy about the whole concept of impact factor for journals at all, because of course there are less journals in those subject areas and less of those less journals are listed in databases like Scopus. As you can see here, it's much harder for your average humanities or social science researcher to target journals with decent impact factors. There are just less of them. So this is also something that needs to be kept in mind and probably is not kept in mind to a great enough extent by international research councils, by governments, by universities. Coverage, when we start to think about academic impact, is an issue in different disciplines. But we all are interested in citation analysis. Of course, it's a way of measuring the impact of an author, an article, or a publication by simply counting the number of times that that author, me or you, that article, my recent paper, or publication, the journal in which my paper has been published, has itself been cited by other works. So authors can have citation metrics. Articles themselves can be associated with citation metrics, and journals themselves can also be associated with citation metrics. So be careful about which ones you're using, be careful about which ones you're talking about. Obviously, the publication article metrics are the ones that you're most interested in when you go and you select a journal for your next paper. So if you're not involved in using citation analysis tools in your own research career, in your own daily lives, then we do recommend that things like ORCID IDs, Google Scholar profiles, if that's possible, should be developed, should be used. Why? Because these make you much more discoverable. These make your research much more findable and therefore much more talk aboutable to researchers around the world. It doesn't take that much effort to set up an ORCID ID, orchid.org. It doesn't take that much effort to set up a Google Scholar profile. Other people will find you. Other people will find your papers if you have these kinds of profiles set up. So quick and easy way to enhance your impact, build your reputation, and ensure that your next articles, your next papers have a higher chance of publication in higher level impact journals. So academic impact over time, of course, as you can see here, has steadily been increasing. The number of publications in journals with higher impact factors are increasing all the time, And so this is something that is worth being aware of. But when it comes to your own research and planning your own research for publication in high impact journals, let's have a think about the design. Let's have a think about what you wish to represent with the work. let's have a think about how you will engage with researchers with both your publication and any pre and post publication activities, online work, social media work, other kinds of marketing type activities for you as a researcher that will engage other people, even if it's just posting your article up on ResearchGate, even if it's just putting your article and listing it on Google Scholar or listing it on ORCID. And ResearchGate is a good place as well to have a profile. It's a great place where you can share your articles if your journal is a traditional journal and it allows you to publish a late stage draft, a so-called green open access publishing model. So design, how you design your study, how you represent the work, how will you engage with researchers as you go through the process, how will you develop early impact, and by that I mean initial downloads, because citations take quite a long time to build in around a research paper. Your early impact can be measured in terms of citation, in terms of downloads, in terms of views, in terms of the Altmetrics score of your paper on a journal website. But then after the publication comes out, how are you going to sustain that impact? How are you going to sustain that particular article and the impact of that article over time? So design, represent, engage, early impact, reflect, and sustain. And the example that we always use in this kind of context is, just imagine that you're doing some research on the molecular genetics of tobacco plants. Well, you could just publish that work in a molecular genetics journal and leave it at that. And lots of researchers do exactly that. They write up their papers, they publish their papers, and then they walk away and forget about the research from a broader socioeconomic public awareness perspective. I could publish a paper on the molecular genetics of tobacco in a journal that deals with molecular genetics, but I could also spend some time talking about that research on my blog, on my social media, in other open channels where other researchers and other members of the public can learn about my research, in terms of all of the other knock-on effects and all of the other things that are interesting about my research and about my research program. So I hope that by using the example of tobacco, you can see that there will be a way for you to broaden the appeal of the research that you do and find ways to talk to people about its bigger impact. So of course, people are interested in aspects of tobacco in addition to just the molecular genetics that you may have studied in your research. What are the broader implications of your work? What's the big picture? What's the big message? And by the way, if you can develop techniques to look at the bigger picture in your research, to put your research into a wider context that will be interesting to lots of different people, then you have the key to publishing your work in higher impact factor journals, because that's what higher impact factor journal editors want to see. They want to see papers that have that broader perspective. They want to see papers that are interesting to a broader section of readers, rather than just the specific details of tobacco molecular genetics. So have a look at this impact checklist. What are you going to do during the research project? What are you going to do on publication? And what are you going to do on an ongoing basis to promote and talk about your research? All of these are very important things to have in mind when you put your projects together, when you plan your research projects, because they will help you to develop the stories around your research. And it's those stories, that bigger picture, that wider benefit, that will provide you, as I just mentioned, with the key to getting your papers into those high impact factor international journals. So are you talking about your research? Are you promoting your research? Are you talking about it? I don't know what social media channels, what academic social networking sites everybody in our presentation today is using, but Instagram, ResearchGate, Facebook, LinkedIn, WeChat. You have channels at your disposal in which you can talk about your research. And you know what? The more you do that, the more people will be aware of your research, and the more people will talk about your research, cite your research, and use your research in the future. So it's well worth doing this. If you're anything like me, when I was an academic, don't make the mistakes that I used to make, just publishing papers and then walking away and not doing anything else to educate, to talk about the work, to sell the work, to describe the work, to make sure that people are aware of the wider implications of your study. Research impact is a journey, and this is a slide that comes from Fast Track Impact. Several of the images that you've seen in this presentation come from fasttrackimpact.com. So if you're interested more in impact specifically as a researcher and how you can measure and develop strategies for maximizing the impact of your research, I do recommend a quick stop on fasttrackimpact.com. Go over there and have a look at all of the fantastic resources that they offer to help researchers build their impact. So here's a checklist. And I always say, wouldn't it be absolutely fantastic if in your next grant application, you were able to include something like this? What inputs do you have? What activities are you undergoing? What will the outputs of your research be? What will the outcomes of those outputs be? And what will the impacts of your research be in the future? And it's well worth having a think about this, because lots of academics just don't do this. And this is what funding agencies, this is what journals, this is the kinds of things that people are looking for when they assess you as a researcher, keeping in mind that your impact is a journey. So strategies for engagement. Researchers, of course, engage with the public more than ever before, but most have no idea how they're actually benefiting the people that they interact with. We are increasingly expected to be able to articulate the value of our work with the public, to justify funding and demonstrate the impact of what we do. So have a think about how you're doing this. It's important. It's important. If you cast your mind back to that circular diagram, academic impact is just half the story. You've also got to think about socioeconomic and other ways in which your research is engaging. So attention, interest, desire, and action. As you move through the process and as you assess your impact, you develop a presentation skill set around your particular topic. The tobacco example I gave you earlier is a good example. My father is another great example. Working on atmospheric chemistry for most of his career, he did not make the link between his research and what? Climate change. Absolutely. So if you make links between your core research, your basic research, and bigger picture questions that lots of people around the world are going to be interested in, of course, working on reactions in the atmosphere, working on chemical reactions in the ozone layer, the link is climate change. And that's the key to get the work published in those high impact factor academic journals. That's the storytelling skill. That's how you can do it. That's how you can build out your own research and make it relevant and interesting to lots of different people. Here's Terry Pratchett, one of my favorite fantasy fiction authors of all time. If you're not English, maybe you've not heard of this guy, but Terry Pratchett, he said this: people get uncomfortable when you tell them new things. People don't believe you as easily when you talk to them about things that they are not expecting to hear. So we know that research is mostly incremental. We know that research builds on things that people already know. So when you develop your storytelling skills in your article writing, you do it step by step. You cite previous work, you build up the story, you don't expect too much from your readers. Of course, everybody knows that large steps are much harder to get into the literature. And with that in mind, let's talk a little bit about preparing to write, because in the third part of this presentation today, I promised you I would give you some tips and tricks for article preparation, for article writing. Now, did you know that the title and the abstract of your article serves a different function than the rest of the paper? The title and the abstract mostly are important in academic article publishing for discoverability. Your title and your abstract are what search engines are using for other researchers to find your papers. So your title and your abstract have to be easy for indexing and searching. They've got to be informative, attractive, and effective. If you are working in a particular subject area, and I don't know your subject area, but there will be a keyword database or a series of highly cited papers that you use all the time in your own research from which you can get some keywords for your own research articles. So have a look if there's a keyword database for your own particular subject area. Have a look at some recent papers that have been highly cited in your field and take out the keywords from the keywords section and use them in your own writing. Your title and your abstract need to contain effective keywords for indexing and searching so that other people can find your work and you'll get cited. So what makes a good title? Well, a good title has to contain the fewest number of words to adequately describe the contents of the paper. Keep the title short, the main issue, the subject, accurate, unambiguous, specific, and complete, no infrequently used abbreviations, and above all, attract people's attention to your article with a short, effective title, concise and informative. Entice, allure, attract the reader without giving away the punchline, not over sensational. And you need to have a title that gives people something that they think, wow, I really want to read that paper. I really want to come in and see what that paper has to tell me. So your title should be compelling and containing some keywords from your subject area so that other researchers, when searching for your work, will be able to find it easily. Having said that, again, your abstract, 200 or 300 words, also must be honest and precise. Has to stand alone, no technical jargon, short and specific, and usually citing no references. The quality of your abstract will, of course, inform your editor's decision about whether or not to send your paper out for peer review at all. And lots of people do this in a rush. Lots of people write their abstracts in a great rush, almost as an afterthought. This has to be a concise, standalone piece of writing with a very clear message, accurately reflecting the full text of the paper. If you struggle to write an abstract, then here is the 4-question-based technique for writing an effective academic abstract. What you do is you write down these 4 questions. Why did you do the study? What did you do? What did you find? And what did you conclude? Write down those 4 questions and then answer them with information relevant to your own topic, to your own experiment, to your own research. Answer those questions and then delete the questions. You will end up with about 100 words that you can then use as the basis of your abstract going forward. These are techniques for title writing. These are techniques for abstract writing. Don't worry if you sign up for other courses, other webinars in this series brought to you jointly by Research Square Company and Bentham Science Publishers. There will be more where that came from. And indeed, if you've enjoyed this presentation today and you're sitting there thinking, wouldn't it be great if the people from Research Square, the people from Bentham Science Publishers could provide some training to my students, to my postgraduates, to members of my university, to members of my research group? Drop us a message. We'd love to do that. Structure in your writing is the most crucial element. Readers need to know where they've come from, where they are now, and where they are going. A plot is needed. A paper is like a story. So, planning your research for publication in high impact factor journals, things to do before you start: prepare correctly, prepare and get into the right mindset. Have a think about some of the information in this presentation as you choose your topic. Identify your audience, your purpose, and gather all of those supporting details before you begin the writing process. Our job is to provide you with a roadmap, preparation, things to think about before you put pen to paper, selling yourself to editors, how to capture an editor's attention, writing with structure, because without a clear structure, you and the editor will be lost. And of course, we've got lots of resources to help you with effective writing in English. We know it's not easy for many people. English is not even a second or third language. It's a fourth or fifth language. We are here to help you with some simple rules in your writing that can make a huge difference. So we have talked in our event today about journal selection. We've talked about maximizing impact, and we've talked about your title and your abstract, how to maximize your impactful publishing. And the point of this, of course, is to help you become more effective as a writer in English. My name's Gareth. I'm the Director of Content at Research Square Company. We've got a preprint platform called Research Square. You can check that out, researchsquare.com. If you're thinking of uploading an article as a preprint, that's a great way to enhance your impact. We also have AJE.com, which is the English language professional services company, professional services editing. We do all of these different things: language editing, translation, grant support, formatting, figure preparation, journal recommendation. You can go to aje.com. You can get 10% off all of our services using the special discount code Gareth10. Take a photograph of this slide. You'll be able to get in touch with me, of course, at any time. And I would also encourage everybody listening to this to jump on over to resources.aje.com/digital editing web, resources.age.com/digital editing web. Sign yourself up for a free 30-day trial of our absolutely fantastic, absolutely amazing digital editing tool. You can upload your papers, go and have a cup of tea, come back 10 minutes later. Usually it's even less. It takes about 4 minutes. Usually the AI tool will edit your paper. Absolutely. So now's your chance to ask any questions. If there are any questions, please do ask them in the chat box. You're very, very welcome. Joanne is asking, can I upload my article in preprint while it's currently under peer review? That depends on the journal. So check with the journal that you've already submitted the paper to. Many will say no problem. Some will say that's not okay. But most people put preprints up onto preprint servers either because their journal that they're submitting to is a participant in a preprint server. So all of the Springer Nature journals, for example, and many more besides, are participants in the Research Square platform preprint server. So when you make a submission to more than 400 journals, it is now, you'll have the opportunity to click the upload preprint button and your preprint will be uploaded onto Research Square at the same time. So thanks for that great question. Don't forget, everybody, to have a look at our amazing digital editing tool. I'm going to put the link there again in the chat box. Everybody will get access to a recording. Everybody will get access to a certificate. And if you have any further questions, you are always welcome to get in touch with me directly. Thank you so much, everybody from all the different countries. I see I'm just scrolling back down the chat box. Loads of different countries. Wow, fantastic. It's great to see so many people here with us today. I'm just looking to see if there are any more questions. We answered that question about ResearchGate. Thank you very much for all of the comments. What country? Does country and context need to be in the title? Very good question. This depends, of course, upon the topic of your research. If I'm publishing a paper on, the population genetics of Nigeria, for example, then it's going to be important for me to put that country name into the title. Whereas, if some of the data that I'm collecting, if some of the data that I'm using comes from one country and maybe several other countries, then maybe not necessary. But it's important to think about that. That's a great question. I would say very often it would, but depending upon your research topic. So do get in touch if you'd like to ask more about that. I always struggle between how much you should share in your abstract about your findings and conclusions. Well, I agree with you that you don't want to share too much, as people tend only to read the abstracts, but you do need to have enough information in the abstract there, Anita, so that people are going to want to read more. So I would tease people, tantalize them with information in your abstract, tell them what potentially the main outcome of the study is, but make sure that they do want to read more. Can we share the recording with others? Absolutely. It's going to be a YouTube link, so we'd love it. We'd love it if you shared our AJE YouTube channel with lots of other people. That would be absolutely fantastic. You're always welcome to share all of our resources, all of our content, all of the material that we share with anybody for, with anybody else. And I think at that point, after shouting and screaming for almost 45 minutes, I will now say thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today.